And the first major change into effect this season is that these episodes are now going to be commentated. I've been thinking about this for a while, and this year I am going to bite the bullet and give it a go, because I think it provides a much more realistic and immersive experience for you guys watching my videos, because before you obviously have to look at the text to read it and then process what action is actually going on in the video at the same time, whereas now you can just listen to me waffling in the background and you can actually watch the action completely for yourself. So let me know if you want to see the rest of the season commentated. I think that's what I'm probably going to do for this season, just to trial it out, and I can always revert back to text hopefully when I have a bit more time as well. Life is very busy at the moment, so at least this means that I'll be able to get slightly more videos out, I guess, if I don't have to put all the text on. So where were we? Yes, that's right, changes for 2026. Now let's talk about the first major change to F1 in 2026, and that is the tyres. Of course, in 2022, Formula 1 switched to 18-inch tyres, and that has been changed again up to even larger 20-inch diameter tyres. And that is because Pirelli received a very high number of complaints multiple times from practically every team last season due to the horrendous tyre wear, if you guys recall. So what they did for the 2026 regulations, they designed some brand new, bigger tyres, the aim being with much reduced wear, and in testing that was evident. All the teams said the tyres were a lot better. This means that there are now going to be much longer stints, meaning that less pit stops have to be made, so we could see stuff like one-stop races coming back into the equation again, as it's been estimated that the tyres might potentially have twice the range of last year, particularly on the softer compounds. So this is going to lead to much better racing, and also significantly improve the drivability of the cars, because the drivers can push for longer, also making driving more enjoyable. The next thing to talk about is revolutionised aerodynamics. The cars in 2026 are so much lighter due to the aero regulations being completely overhauled, completely transformed. The cars now feel much more nimble, completely glued to the track, and this means that drivers are just going to be able to completely throw the car around, be much more aggressive, and therefore able to push much harder every lap without the fear of the car snapping as frequently. So I think this again is really going to improve the quality of racing that we see in 2026 and make the driving much more enjoyable. It's also worth mentioning that the powertrain departments have also been affected slightly by this new regulation change. What I mean by that is that the engines now have a slower top speed. However, there is now much more powerful ERS and much faster battery recharge. So that's going to make overtaking even easier if you're following a car, because the ERS is just so much more powerful and it recharges a lot quicker. So again, that is going to improve racing. This is another fantastic change that has come to 2026. Of course, the engines being altered could also potentially have a massive impact on the pecking order, but we'll talk about that later. The final thing to talk about before we review each team one by one is the calendar, of course. 20 races this year, down from 22 in the previous season. And in a minute, I'm going to put the calendar on screen. But first of all, I am announcing that as a trial for next season, or possibly future episodes, I'm still not sure yet, there are going to be 3 35% races as opposed to 25% races in this season. And I can reveal they will be at Monaco, Belgium and Qatar. And with that said, I will now put the calendar on screen now. Here it is, the all-new 20 race calendar that is going to be used by Formula 1 in the 2026 season, of course, reminding you of those 3 35% Grand Prix held at Monaco, Belgium and Qatar. But now to the very beginning, Australia is back as the season opener. We then return here to Bahrain for round 2. The Chinese Grand Prix is back in F1, and then round 4 is Imola, the opening round of the European season. The Hungarian Grand Prix is also back on the calendar for round 10, the halfway point and the season break. We then return with a 35% race at Spa. Japan is round 14. Saudi Arabia moved over to round 15 before concluding with the American part of the season and finishing up in Qatar, and the season finale is once again at Abu Dhabi. So, of course, Miami, Montreal, Zandvoort and Las Vegas all missed out on the calendar this year, but they will be back on the calendar for next season, as now we reveal the all-new driver lineups. You've waited long enough, starting with the reigning Constructors' Champions Ferrari. Charles Leclerc has stayed, but Carlos Sainz is no longer with the Italian outfit. Their new driver is Mick Schumacher. After impressing time and again for Haas last year, we have a Schumacher back in Ferrari overalls. That is massive, and we're riding on board with the German youngster now, and to be honest, he looked impressive in a car that is slow. Ferrari threw all their resources at trying to win the championship for Leclerc last year and failing to do so, and it has ultimately come back to cost them dearly. And it doesn't look like Ferrari are going to be fighting anywhere near the front of the grid, although thankfully Leclerc was okay after this crash. The red flags were waved, and the red flags of danger were waved at Ferrari, because they have got work to do. Next up we have McLaren, second in the Constructors last year and keeping the same drive lineup that they finished the season with, defending world champion Pierre Gasly and hugely impressive Australian rookie Oscar Piastri, who was brought in midway through last season. McLaren have also got a new look, having signed a new sponsorship deal with Chrome and have reverted to their usual orange and black livery that they wore pre-2025. Once again it appears that the Woking outfit are going to be serious contenders for podiums, with both cars comfortably inside the top 10. However, there was lots of learning being done in testing, as with all teams, as even defending world champion Pierre Gasly struggled to get used to the new cars, and he had this spin down at turn 8. Thankfully the French driver was okay, and he managed to get back to the pits and repair the floor before continuing with testing. Now we are riding on board with Red Bull's latest recruit, Japanese driver Yuki Tsunoda, who of course replaced Lando Norris, who left under a cloud at the end of last season. Partnering Verstappen, they will be desperately trying to see if they can bring the Constructors' crown back to Milton Keynes in 2026. Although as much as that's what they want to aspire to, the reality is Red Bull are midfield at best. Just like Ferrari, it seems they've got the new regulation change all wrong, and Max Verstappen was heard multiple times cursing over the radio at how undrivable and slow the car was, even though the new regulation changes are supposed to be improving the drivability. It appears this was possibly just frustration getting the better of the Dutchman, but nevertheless, Red Bull, alike Ferrari, have got some serious work to do, and they're going to be fighting for points rather than podiums in 2026. Just to rub salt into the wound for Verstappen, he was only 17th when the flag fell down on testing. The next team is Mercedes, still sporting the same livery that they wore in the final two Grand Prix of last season, and primarily sponsored by Ineos. However, one major thing has changed for them. A new driver. Alexander Albon is now racing for Mercedes, and it's fair to say it was taking him a while to get used to the latest machinery from the team from Brackley, as he had a small spin at turn 1 and 2 and then struggled to get the car pointing in the right direction. Despite this, him and teammate George Russell still find themselves cemented in the midfield, as Mercedes once again appear to be struggling for pace, only on a much greater scale this season. It seems that Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes will still be fighting each other, only rather than being at the front, being down in the midfield. Now, Aston Martin. They were 5th in the Constructors last year and did look like dark horses with some serious pace at times, although from what testing has told us, they're going to be a whole lot higher than that this year, and in fact, they are the team to beat. Aston Martin finished with Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll 1 and 2 at the top of the leaderboard when the checkered flag came out at the end of testing. The team have absolutely nailed the regulation change, produced a super fast car, and now it genuinely looks like Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll could be fighting over the World Drivers' Championship in 2026. What a fascinating spectacle it is. Albon has signed by Mercedes. Stroll moved back across to his old team Aston Martin because he was unhappy after just 1 year at Alfa Romeo Penske. And what do you know, Stroll cannot believe his luck as he's found himself a championship winning car. Speaking of Lance Stroll's old team, Alfa Romeo Penske are in a very similar situation that they were last year in terms of position along the pecking order. They're probably about the 7th best car, something similar to last year. Points are certainly not beyond them, they're going to score a few, but ultimately they're probably towards the rear of the midfield. And as you can see, we are riding on board with their latest signing, Guan Yu Zhou, who's been signed from Williams to return to his old team, who gave him his Formula 1 debut back in 2022. To be honest, it was a pretty ordinary test session from Alfa Romeo, except the fact that poor Chair had this spin. Thankfully the Frenchman was alright, he managed to get back to the pits, get his car repaired and get back out on track. Pourchaire and Zhou finished 12th and 14th respectively. Next we have Haas, and unfortunately for Indian Jayan Daruvula, the test started in the worst possible way, as soon as he began his reconnaissance laps upon leaving the pits, he encountered a reliability error with his car. He pulled over by turn 1 and the marshals rescued him, although thankfully for the Indian he managed to get back out on track and do some more laps to get used to the new car. He ended up P16 as the checkered flag fell. His Brazilian teammate Felipe Drogovic also looked quite impressive in his first outing in his new car. However, the most impressive thing about Haas this year is their highly strikingly new orange and white livery, due to their main sponsor is now Repsol, who are transitioning to F1 away from MotoGP. As for the team's position in the pecking order, seems to be very similar to last year, lower midfield. Now we have Alpine, the French outfit who had a really disappointing year last year. And now we know the exact reason why. It was later revealed that Alpine had sacrificed their entire 2025 campaign to save their resources to build a title contender in 2026, and that is exactly what they have done. They are the challengers to Aston Martin. They are the second team, the second closest team who are most likely to be winning races. And Spitfire Walker cannot believe his luck. He thought initially it would be a downgrade going to Alpine after leaving Mercedes, because he said he wasn't enjoying driving for the team anymore. Only now it looks like he could well be in with a position to potentially win even more races than he did last season. Speaking in the press conference, the British driver actually admitted that Alpine had told him of their plans to potentially construct a championship winning car for next season, and that was the main thing that motivated Walker to leave Mercedes, and it turns out it's done the trick, as the British driver ended up P5 in testing. Next up, the all-new Ford Performance Formula 1 team, formerly known as AlphaTauri, then Ford AlphaTauri, and now just Ford Performance. The AlphaTauri takeover is complete, and they are using the Ferrari power unit. But unfortunately for F1's latest American team, it seems that they're going to be trailing around at the foot of the grid, because they just haven't seemed to be able to get a grip on the new reg changes. Both Hauger and De Vries are in the bottom 5. It looks like there's going to be some late evenings for the guys working in the factory. Next up, Williams, who are clearly struggling, as demonstrated by this spin from their latest recruit, Jake Hughes. The former McLaren driver is now back in Formula 1 after spending the second half of last year on the sidelines, and he is now partnering Logan Sargent at Williams. But unfortunately for the pair of them, they're not going to be getting very far, because once again Williams are right at the back of the grid. They seem to be struggling, their handling is poor, their reliability is poor, because Hughes later had to return to the pits to address a fuel leak. It looks like Williams once again are going to be struggling in 2026. And now, ladies and gentlemen, will you please join me in welcoming the latest addition to the Formula 1 grid, Audi Sport Formula 1 team. And somehow they have managed to bag themselves Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz as their driver lineup. This is absolutely unbelievable scenes here. Norris walked away from Red Bull to sign for the Audi outfit, and Sainz did the same from Ferrari, so their best buddies could be reunited once again. And their car looks like it could be a serious dark horse too, because both drivers were inside the top 8, and Carlos Sainz bolted on the soft tyres and his Audi shot into the top 4. So it looks like their car is seriously quick, at the very worst upper midfield, and I'm sure the skill of the two drivers combined will drag Audi a long way up the order this year. So expect them to be fighting for podiums and possibly race wins week in, week out. And there you go, guys, that is it. That is the end of pre-season for 2026. This has taken me a long time to make, to get all these ideas combined with the mods and everything. So now I'm going to put the results up from the full testing on the left hand side. You can take a look at those as we ride on board with the fastest man from testing, Fernando Alonso, on board for an entire lap of the Sakir International Circuit. At this point, I want to say thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and more importantly, I hope you guys are as excited as I am for the next season of Monoposto Driver Career Mode, which will be starting imminently. So be sure to keep an eye out on my channel as I will premiere the very first race at the Australian Grand Prix. So now I'll say thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Remember, you can follow me on Instagram and join my Discord server. All the relevant links are in the description below. And I'll see you guys all in Albert Park. Goodbye.